Pre-order the Clownfish TV comic book right now on Indiegogo. Go to clownfishtvcomic.com. That's clownfishtvcomic.com. This is a fun collection of all new comic strips based on dumb stuff we've said on the show. Again, that's clownfishtvcomic.com. You're gonna have to hurry. We're only taking pre-orders for a limited time. Now we're gonna get back into the show. Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about how comics have never been better.
Right.
Comics have never been better. This is a lie.
If you keep saying it over and over again, it doesn't change anything, but somehow makes people surprised when shit goes down.
This is a lie that has been perpetuated by the comic book journalists and Twitterati for more than half a decade now. The comic book industry was doing fine. Everything was fine. Do not listen to YouTubers. Do not listen to those right-wing chuds. Do not listen to anyone who might objectively, even if they own a shop or something, like some people do, might objectively point out that the comic book industry, the direct market, is not doing that well.
The Emperor's clothes are just fantastic.
Yeah, they are.
They're fine. Don't listen to people saying he's naked. They're lying.
Yeah, the Emperor is bare-ass naked. We're going to talk about this because I think the reality is starting to sink in. And it's going to be very painful for a lot of people who had more than a half a decade of warning that things were not good, because I think they were listening to their peers on Twitter who wanted to soothe themselves and convince themselves that things were fine. They were listening to journalists who were telling everybody how fantastic the comic book industry was, but you had to really play with the numbers to get there. Usually it was like, yeah, comic sales are fantastic, even though most of the sales are manga and it has no bearing on the Western market.
If you squint and only see zeros, it's fine.
Yeah, right. Like that could be a million, it could be a zero. So we're going to talk about this as people who have worked in and around the comic book industry for a number of years.
Twitter says you're lying.
Twitter
you're big
says.
nobodies and you're wash-up has-beens. You've never done anything of note.
Okay.
Even though we have checks with IEW on them.
Yeah, I actually did work for IDW. I did. Works for, two birds with one stone. IDW work on Disney comics.
And we also have Disney checks with Mickey Mouse on them too.
We do. I actually had the one. I kept it for the longest time.
We still have it. Both it and the IEW ones we still have.
Anyway, we're gonna talk about this because I've noticed I guess a lack of chatter. For the longest time, there was all this acrimony between YouTubers and now I haven't been knee deep in the Twitter drama for a while, but all this acrimony between comic book professionals and YouTubers. And, we had the factions, we had the Comics Gate and the Anti-Comics Gate and the this and the that, and all these people were fighting each other all the time. And
then you have us who just walked into it accidentally.
We tripped and fell face first into this shit. Yeah. And really what got me into following this was having walked away from comics years ago because the money wasn't there then. Walking away and dipping back in on Marvel sales numbers and all the changes Marvel had been making and all that post-Disney. And it was like, oh my God.
And you asked questions like, wow, this isn't good. And just by saying that,
you're Comics Gate.
Right. And you're like, what's Comics Gate? And then a bunch of our friends who've known us for years stopped talking to us.
Yes.
Over we were saying we were Comics Gate because you asked a simple question. And we had nothing to do with Comics Gate at the time.
No.
We're not even technically Comics Gate now.
Technically, no. But no, the fact that we have a YouTube channel and that we're critical of the comic book industry.
We're adjacent.
We're adjacent. You're not allowed to. So I think, look, I'm going to tell you the truth. I think this is ending. I think all of this is ending because right now, the people that have gone after YouTubers the hardest are having to scramble to line up their next gig because the bottom is falling out of all of this we're going to talk about. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. You'll get a woohoo.
Woohoo.
There's your woohoo from Geeky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've published comics ourselves. We've worked on comics for a number of publishers. We had an agent who specializes in pitching comics projects. I would not recommend it. I'm going to be honest, unless you absolutely positively have to have one. I would not recommend that because the more people that meddle with your work, the less likely you are to be satisfied with the end product.
That's true.
Let's put it that way.
That's true.
So really what kind of kicked this off is IDW Publishing breaking down. Anybody who's been paying attention, I did a video on it the other day. It was just kind of a cursory evaluation, but we'll go into more detail here. Anybody who has been paying attention knows that IDW has been on the rocks for at least 5 years. At least 5 years. And IDW was indicative of the bigger picture, the bigger problem with comics. It was basically they were, I believe, allocating funds to Hollywood pitches to try to get their shows picked up by Netflix and all this junk.
Well, it didn't help, too. They made a lot of changes to core characters that people did not like, which is a big part of the failure of comics.
Yeah, they stopped relying on their own in-house IP, and then they went to, licensing a lot of stuff, Hasbro stuff, Ninja Turtles, Sonic, G.I. Joe, and they effed up G.I. Joe, and Transformers now is all about, sexual identity. They're freaking robots that turn into cars,
Yes. But there's non-binary ones now, which is good to know, apparently.
Marvel did it first. In the Marvel comics, there were no female Transformers originally. They even said the one Pretender was getting hit on by this giant alien woman, and he's like, yeah, we're robots. We don't do that. They just make us on the assembly line. So,
right.
I'm not interested.
I love when people go check their cars to see if it's male or female.
Yeah, right. So anyway, they've had a lot of problems. They've lost the Hasbro license, whatever. They've gone, but the term is tits up, which is a female robot when she's laying down. Yes, when she's transforming, she's going tits up. I gotta bring this up. Look here. Here's the thing.
This is funny to us. It's Anthony.
It's Anthony Gramuglia. Now, Anthony Gramuglia has I think it's Gramuglia. I don't know. He has a major hate.
It's called Anthony.
He has a major hate boner for us. I think it's because you called him out on a She-Ra video.
You should use the word major and boner in the same sentence for him.
Well, that could be a new IDW Transformers character.
Major boner.
Major Boner, the headmaster.
Oh, no.
But the little robot's not going where you think he goes.
So he's got a little boner.
Okay. Anyway, look, this guy, he's a vagabond journalist.
But he calls everybody else grifters, which is funny to me.
Here's what's so funny about all this. I'm looking at, people said that he was kind of lamenting IDW, like, oh my God, this is a dark day for comics. I'm like, how the hell? You're a journalist. How the hell did you not see this coming?
That's what I don't understand. A lot of these journalists, Heidi McDonald's another one.
I blame her.
What happened? Where did this come from? Here's my thing. Here's my thing, okay? This is a lesson, not just in comics, for everything. If there are warning signs in place and people are sounding the alarms, not liking those people doesn't make it untrue. Okay? You just didn't like these people and you lumped them into your brain cell of what they should be, and you didn't listen to what the actual points with the actual evidence. You just didn't want to hear it, so you turned a blind eye, pretend they weren't saying it because you don't like them. And now you're like, what?
What?
How'd this happen?
And look, I mean, journalists should have known better.
People expect them to know better.
They expect them to know better. Your job, and actually I will give Rich Johnston props in this case. Rich Johnston was actually sounding the alarm on freelancers not getting paid. He was sounding the alarm on IDW's financial state. You don't have to like Rich Johnston. I do think he stirs the shit sometimes just for clicks, but welcome to the internet, right? But he actually and he was dunking on Comicsgate all the time too. But outside of YouTubers, he was one of the few people who were actually saying, hey, there are some fundamental problems here. This is not going to last long term, right? So Anthony here look, he hates us. I know he hates us. I know he's part of groups that conspire against us because they think
finger hearts, Anthony. Finger hearts.
Yeah, I think he really doesn't like you. He doesn't like.
Okay. That's okay.
Anyway. That aside, I agree with him 100% on pretty much everything in his Twitter feed regarding IDW. Now, we've been saying the same thing for years. Years.
He just makes them like She-Ra, but yes.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
We've been saying this, everything that the dreaded, horrible YouTubers have been saying is exactly what these media people are saying now, because now it's safe to say so, and now that you cannot deny it anymore. And, if there was any way to stop it from happening, if people would have recognized the signs and listened, this could have probably been avoided, but they fucking wouldn't.
The problem with fan media in a lot of respects is I believe that the media gets too chummy with the people involved in making this stuff.
I agree.
And they let their fandom cloud their perception of what's actually going on.
Well, not just that. If the company like IDW could have done some course correction to save itself.
They could have.
Which they could have.
Yes. Absolutely.
People like Anthony and the media would have whipped them a new asshole because how dare you walk back? You're just pandering to the chuds. What the hell's wrong with you? And so these companies you get to a place where you cannot walk it back. I think Disney's running into that big time.
Yeah.
But you cannot walk it back because you set yourself up to be like, oh, well, you're the voice of whatever. You're standing up for us. Thing is, that doesn't mean you're going to make money. These people don't spend the money, and then you can't walk it back.
So which is the worst scenario? You get some flack on social media from some people that probably weren't going to buy your stuff anyway, or you go bankrupt.
Well, here's the thing: if they had made changes, what would the media have done?
Oh, they would have eviscerated them. They would have been like, wait, they're rolling G.I. Joe back to being like super toxic, masculine 1980s Reagan era fetish comics. Oh my God.
They would have.
Oh my God.
They would have screamed and screamed and screamed, and then they would have totally done that, even if they had tried to walk it back. So they were doomed to fail anyway, and then because they didn't make the choice to go back with the media, who are now like, what happened? I don't understand. What? They would have totally been down their throat over any changes they would have made to try to shift to the market, to meet where the market was. They would have had a shit hissy cow. And that's that. You could look shit hissy cow. Moo.
What the hell is a shit hissy cow? Do I want to know?
I think you can find it on Twitter.
Shit hissy cow. Okay, so let's look at and again, people are like, you're singling him out. Anthony really does not like it. I know he doesn't, and I know this guy.
We're not just singling Anthony out, but Anthony posts some really dumb things.
I'm singling him out. I'm singling him out in this case.
We're not going to single just him out. We're going to talk about other people too.
We're talking about the whole thing.
Yeah, not
because
just him.
This is what put it on my radar that journalists were acting surprised. Yeah, I'm like, what the hell?
It's like that Good Luck Charlie meme.
What? I agree with almost everything on his thread. Again, we covered this. IDW loses the G.I. Joe and Transformers comic licenses. I can almost assure you, a year ago, this is a huge contributing factor. Yes.
No shit, Anthony.
No
you know
shit.
what? They wouldn't have lost them if they would have done well with them and they would have sold and people wouldn't have turned against them.
This is like a comic publisher can't profit without content. No. And the bulk of IDW's content came from Hasbro. Without the money coming in from that deal, they can't market their other comics, creating a chain reaction.
No.
What?
You don't say.
And we've been saying since the beginning, the biggest problem with IDW actually is that they relied too heavily on licensed comics because they had no IP of their own. There's nothing like if IDW, and they've laid off a whole bunch of people, we talked about that, they're gutting IDW, right? There's nothing left to sell. Like, what are you selling exactly? You're selling a company, they shut down their games division, which was profitable. You're selling a company that predominantly produced licensed comics and any other comic book company can pick up. But you ruined them on the way up.
Them. You wouldn't put people in charge, made changes that they should not have made, cost them their core audience, which cost them the sales, which cost them the license, which now they don't have the money for the big comic licenses to go fund their other stuff, which is what we have been saying, Anthony.
So Anthony's got a thing going on with Ethan. I think he likes Ethan. I don't know.
Ethan.
That's
he hates Ethan more than me, so that tells you something.
Yeah.
I'm not his number one target.
They lost the Star Wars licenses. They were publishing Star Wars comics in conjunction with Marvel. Now that's over. Do you know why they lost the Star Wars licenses? They mishandled them.
That's also why they lost G.I. Joe and Transformers, I believe.
G.I. Joe, what happened was, because here's the thing about G.I. Joe, it's mostly middle-aged men, a lot of them very pro-military, because it is a Reagan-era fetish comic.
True story today, when I was at that one place I went to with the kids, they went to go to their classic vintage record store.
Yes.
The one place that was there had a huge stack, pristine, in-bagged, all G.I. Joe Marvel. But I didn't let you know because usually when I asked you about comics, you say you're not interested.
Oh,
you wanted those? Oh. Shoot, they're closed now.
No,
well, they'll be open again in a couple weeks.
Okay. Anyway.
No, I was going to let you know, but you always tell me, I don't want them.
I know.
You also saw XMen with Art's name on it.
Art T-Bear, yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, we saw comics with you on it, Art. Yay!
An entire stack of X-Men comics from the mid to late 90s, and Art T-Bear's name was on most of them. And oh my God, the media hates Art T-Bear, who was, he was big in the 90s, right? Art, I knew Art. I used to think it was Art Thibert. Because, but Art was on almost all the X-Men comics back then.
So we smiled, we saw your name. We're like, yay, go Art. Anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because your sister was there and we're going through it and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Art. I know that guy. And she's kind of like, yeah, of course you do. Who else do you know? I don't know. We know a lot of people, okay? We get around. We know a lot of people. But yeah, Art, if you're listening, hello, by the way. Lots of comics.
We were thinking of you.
Yeah, lots of, God, and it was sad, too, because I'm looking through a stack of X-Men comics, and I'm like, now it's all about prom, but these covers were hot. Like,
you should have taken pictures and posted it and sent it to Art. Anyway,
I should have. But it was almost every issue had Art's name on
I was going to, but I was afraid you'd be mad at me. And we're talking like pristine on card in bags. They had the little Spider-Man logo from Marvel in the corner, and I should have wrote you, but you always tell me I don't care.
Okay, now before we go any further, I just want to be clear. Like, yeah, we're talking about Anthony's tweets. Do not contact him. Please do not contact him. I'm not doing this to. I guess I'm just shocked that now that we're on the other side of it, and I think we are on the other side of the worst of it, this fan fighting bullshit because the money's running out, I think we're going to find out that, truth is going to win out. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to get hurt because they were lied to for years. We're
only bringing it up because it's an example that's indicative of journalists now being like, what happened? And then most of what he's saying is what happened. We agree with him on because we said it for a long time. And when we said it was grifting bullshit. But now that he says it, it's fact.
So look, there are a lot of things. We're going to talk about Howie McDonald. I want to talk about this first though.
Okay.
This one was the biggest F you.
It's like, how the hell do you not know?
So after it started coming out that, and a lot of publishers were bleeding out money last year, Dark Horse wound up selling themselves off to Embracer, and Dark Horse was bigger than IDW, and they sold off to Embracer Group. I think Mike Richardson's a pretty smart guy. He's like, yeah, it's not going to get better. It's time to cash in my chips, right? I think he's in his 70s now. He's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. Widespread rumors that comic book creators were not getting paid. Right? At multiple companies. It wasn't just like, because usually, this has always been the case. You always get like one company that's flaky that doesn't pay, or one company that's hit hard times. And true story, IDW back in 2014, I had to chase them for money. And that was before it came out that they were having major financial problems. I think it took me 6 months to get paid for a couple of covers. And it was like, they just kept dragging it out and dragging it out and dragging it out. But this came out in, again, this is Rich Johnson. This came out in December. And then not long after that, we've got this, week and a half later on ICV2. According to Rob Solkowitz, the North American comic sales are up. Let's start off with the good news. It's raining money.
But when you look into it, it's not the floppy comics that is what's selling.
It's raining money, right? Yeah, and that's it. And that is the lie, because it's followed by the boom cycle going bust in 2022. It's talking about, this was 2021, and they said it is impossible. These banner ads. It's impossible to make money for most writers and artists in comics. I thought things have never been better. Because the lie was comics are fine because manga sales are good and graphic novel sales are good. But as far as the majority of people that work in comics, they are working on, in America, they're working on monthly titles that were not selling for publishers that were hanging on by their fingertips. Manga sales are doing fantastic. They are. Are American creators going to see any of that? No, they're not. Same with graphic novels. Dogman sells well. Raina Telgemeier sells well.
They're for kids.
They're basically illustrated kids books. But beyond that, there are so few people who break into that market, that scholastic middle grade market. We're talking a couple of dozen creators.
It's by design, though. But that's another story.
It is by design because you start cannibalizing your audience, right?
It's smart.
Compared to the hundreds and hundreds of people that work in the direct market that aren't making anything. They really aren't. So again, back to journalists lying to people. And look, I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know what happened to Howie McDonald. She used to be, and I said before, she used to be a pretty reputable reporter, right? I think she's covering for her friends. I think she's been covering for her friends. She did not want to get canceled. So she's like, everything's great, guys. And here it's basically the fact that, comics had their biggest year ever.
Bigger than the 50s.
Oh my God, guys. Okay. And then you go to the article. And this is about, how great the sales were, right? You go to this article.
It's like biased commentators.
Despite what deeply biased video commentators have to say, comics are thriving, even superheroes. While you can argue that 2.3 is modest growth and not a cataclysmic decline. Yeah, except when it is. Except when it is. And it's all crashing down very, very quickly.
And the thing is, they keep trying to say it's comic sales, but it's not just like the comics, the floppy comics. A lot of what's rolled into these numbers are a couple things. One, the manga and stuff like that. And if they don't put that in there, they also are including every crowdfunder that's comics related, including the people they hate that did really, really, really well. They roll those numbers into it as well.
So now we've got Heidi saying it's a comics contraction. Other outlets are like, it's freaking imploding. Heidi.
A contraction.
And so because you've got journalists like Heidi that are out there like, hey guys, this is fine. Comics are great. All these young creators, all these creators were believing that their ship was going to come in.
It's bigger than the 50s.
It's bigger than the 50s. Like, what the hell? Like, anybody could look at this and realize the situation was really bad, but the only reason they put a positive spin on it was because they didn't want their YouTube enemies to win. They didn't want people like, Bleeding Fool to win. Bleeding Fool was basically talking about, the comic book industry being in trouble and showing a lot of contradiction, and regardless of politics, it's all there. Any legit comic book industry journalist would have been like, holy shit, guys, things are bad. Like, look what's coming down the pipeline.
Well, to be fair, if you flip the chart upside down, comics look like they're doing better.
Yeah, right. Graphic novel sales are down. I mean, look, you go to Ollies bargain outlet, right? You go to Ollies.
Oh my God, there's shelves and shelves.
Shelves and shelves and shelves of trade paperbacks. I'm sure there is some juggling of the books, no pun intended, but I'm sure that they're counting sales to Ollies at a steep discount as being sales. Mm-hmm. And then you've got comics from 2015 through 2017, especially just sitting there rotting.
That's a valid point. Why don't we ever see a chart with here's the sales numbers and here's the amount of money, but here's the actual expenses that are go along with it to see how much actually is being made?
So I have a theory. This is my theory of everything. I believe the comic book industry is protecting itself because I think they know if these comics journalists actually did their job and they actually spelled out how bad things actually were, Marvel and DC could possibly get shut down.
Well, not just that. They sure as hell wouldn't give them free copies of things and give them the media access and everything else.
And now it's gotten so bad that we can't lie anymore. But what is happening is, again, we had a whole bunch of people who are angry as hell because they were convinced that the comic book industry was just super, that everything was fantastic.
It's just resting.
It's just resting right now. It's not dead. It's really, it's not. I know it's a little cold, but whatever. And again, manga's going to do fine. Back issues are going to do fine. All that stuff's going to do fine. But ask the shop owners. Look at all the shops that have gone out of business.
Here's the thing too. They're talking about comics. There's a lot of comics that aren't superhero comics too. So people I think are just over superheroes. Some of the other titles might be picking up because people want something different, and they're not breaking it down by that either. They're saying, well, including superhero comics, they went up, and it's like, yeah, but there's a lot of books out there that aren't superheroes now, and some of them I think are selling in some ways better. Than some of the superhero books. Yeah, well, this is 100% true right here. Because again, what blows my mind is, oh my God, Comicsgate. But you mentioned, people that have done, YouTubers have done crowdfunding, and whether they're Comicsgate or Comicsgate adjacent or whatever. On average, a lot of these campaigns are doing a lot better than the Kickstarter campaigns or what, because you're getting a lot of six-figure campaigns. Before it was rare for a comic book campaign to break six figures. In fact, we had one break six figures. Just promoting it on our YouTube channel, right? But this is, what the mantra has been is that comics are better than ever. There have been several people on Twitter being like, comics are better than ever, guys. They're not saying that anymore. I'm seeing a lot of people out of work. In fact, you just pointed this out to me. That from today.
Yeah, Bleeding Cool. Bleeding Cool says, former IDW employees are now available for work. Work where? Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to be a dick, but where are you going to work? Oni Press, they're going tits up. Dark Horse, who knows? Dark Horse might stop publishing comics. They might just be like, you know what? We've got the IP we wanted. We got the Hellboy and we got whatever else we wanted from it. And we're just going to make movies and video games and that's it. Because comics aren't important to us. Comic books aren't important to these mega corporations. Mm-mm. The margins aren't there. But yeah, anyway, comics are better than ever. Marvel editors are making like $40,000 a year living in New York. Because that's all Disney will pay him. And
it's almost like you got what you paid for, and then it bit you in the ass.
Okay, so that is my unified theory of everything, and this is going to be a very.
You have several unified theories of everything's in this video.
I've got
It's like all, like A, B, C.
Yes,
D.
in
Point
the
one,
multiverse,
point two.
in the multiverse, everything fits. No, actually, this is how I believe we got to where we're at right now. Okay, because a lot of people are like, why are there so many underpaid activists working in the comic book industry? Why don't we have professionals like we used to have, distinguished?
They ran them out.
They ran them out. Money is...
Oh my God, milkshakes, guys.
Oh my God, milkshakes. Yeah, money. Disney and Warner, whoever, they don't want to pay the money that the veterans want anymore. So what happens is they hire what they can afford. They hire who they can afford.
Tumblr people mostly.
Tumblr people. People from webcomics, people that, are happy just to get paid to do comics. Never mind that, they're only paying them like $35,000, $40,000 a year in New York.
Well, it's kind of like that monopoly for millennials we joked about. That these people they were happy to be paid and likes and upvotes. It's like they were there not for the money because, they live in an apartment with 20 other people. They're there more because they wanted the seat. They wanted the activist platform. They wanted the megaphone, and that's more what they did. And so when they got in there, they brought their friends in, they pushed everybody else out by calling them names and saying, well, if you keep them here, you're just alt-right, Yahtzee, misogynistic, phobic, whatever. It went to the media who were all backing them the whole time, getting them to echo it back, because if you say it over and over again, if you say a lie repeatedly, it makes it true, even though it's still a lie.
Yes.
And they did that so that they're trying to turn public opinion. And if you stepped out of line and said, but wait, you're burn the witch.
You've got people like Eric Larson, who was very anti-Comicsgate, coming out and saying a lot of the same things that these YouTubers were saying. You've got Bill Sienkiewicz, who again came out and against Comicsgate, but he wound up come around and saying the same thing.
You got Anthony.
You've got Anthony now. Anthony, oh my God, Anthony's Comicsgate. Confirmed. Coming out and saying the same things. Like,
it's just common sense.
You believe this lie because you didn't want to believe the people you hated were telling the truth.
Right.
So you bought into it so easily. And now, what do you have? You basically destroyed what was left of the comic book industry. Most of you didn't build life rafts because you thought it was going to go on forever.
Right. People don't understand that just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean they're always wrong.
No.
And I ran into this once a long time ago with the PTO, and there was somebody that was there, and we did not get along well, but they had some valid points, and I sided with them, and people were like, well, I thought you didn't like that person. You're not supposed to side with that person. You don't like them. I'm like, whether I like that person or not, they're still not wrong. They're still not wrong. And it would be ridiculous of me to ignore the fact that they're correct just because I don't like them. And sadly, that's what we're seeing. It's mostly about politics. It's usually down to politics. Well, they're on this side, they're on that side. But sometimes somebody might have a valid point and they might not agree with you in every other aspect, and you might not like them at all, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. And ignoring what they're saying because you don't like them is kind of dumb, You can go back to not liking them after you can, agree that point is correct.
You can't afford to, buy into this politically polarized bullshit anymore. I mean, I'm sorry you don't like the politics of YouTubers who have been calling this out for 5+ years.
The irony is they just assume people's politics. They don't even fucking know.
No.
Because they just assume, like, they keep calling us one thing when we're not, just because they assume it. Because if you don't agree with me, you're obviously the opposite of me and hence the enemy, even if you're correct.
And if that is the case, and you're a journalist, and your thinking is that
journalist.
And your thinking is that binary, do yourself and the world a big favor and leave that industry.
Yes.
Because we have enough polarized people working in the media, and the purge is happening in real time because it's not sustainable. That's not what people really want.
But you did it to yourselves. They did it to themselves. The comics, IDW, the media, comics media, all of this. You kept spinning bullshit and lies. You kept covering for people who were doing really shitty things and working in the shadows with shadow networks and things.
They covered for predators, sexual predators.
Well, some of them were themselves involved with some of these alleged networks. And you guys went all in on it to get your own way. And when you got what you wanted, it was you no longer, you ran the companies into the ground.
Yeah, and we've seen it. I mean, books that should sell themselves, X-Men, they do it to troll their social media adversaries, like
You mean the actual audience of the comic?
the actual audience. Yeah. So to get back at those YouTubers, I swear to God, I think the whole XMen Gala thing is all about like we're gonna own the chuds. We're gonna make all the X-Men gay, and they're gonna dress up in fancy clothes once a year, and they're gonna glam it up. And that's compare that to the '90s X-Men comics, which were badass. Again, thank you, Art, for your role in that, your contribution in that. And it's just a night and day. It's like this isn't even the same comic book.
Well, comics are selling. What's selling the most? Back issues.
Yes.
You know, I'm sorry. The reality is the reality. Whether you like to hear it or not, it's still the reality. I don't know what to fucking tell you.
The reality is you burn the industry down.
Yeah, you were complicit in the burning down of the industry.
You were too obsessed with politics and owning the chuds, and now you've got no future. You really don't. I mean, not in this industry because it doesn't exist anymore. And most of these people, they've tried crowdfunding and it doesn't work for them. They've tried doing blogs, it doesn't work for them. They've tried doing other things, it doesn't work for them. And the people who are the loudest, who spent the most time being obnoxious online, trying to own the chuds, again, they spent all that time trying to own the chuds. They should have been working on their own skills, networking, building up their own audiences, their own platforms. But instead, no, it meant more to them to make sure that everybody knew they were right. They were the good guys.
Never right.
But they were never right. And this proves it. Like
and they would double, triple down after people like us.
Yeah. And you burned it down for everybody. It's not just about you. It's not just about the YouTubers. It's about the hundreds of comic book professionals who are probably going to face unemployment now because of your asshattery and your lying to the entire industry, to all these people, that things were fine, things were great. They've never been better, when all of the data, all of the evidence points to the contrary.
It was ridiculous. Like Heidi McDonald was like, oh, look, we have one blip where it might have gone up a tiny bit. Look, you're all wrong. Ha, 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 ha.
And gloating about it. I'm like,
my God, Heidi, you've been this long enough. You should fucking know better.
I don't know what the hell happened to her. She used to be, the Comics Beat used to be one of the most reputable, most unbiased comic book news sources out there. And she got sucked into this Twitter cult or something. But like, it's time for you to retire. It's time for you to go, because you can't tell the truth, and you're a journalist, and that is literally like your job is to just spell it out. You know, here's where things are at, guys. But again, when you're friendly with everybody in the industry, you can't do that because some people might feel bad.
Allegedly, she was part of some of the secret groups that were going on.
Well, that's a whole nother issue.
Allegedly.
Yep, that is a whole nother issue. But there we go, guys. Comics have never been better. And other lies. We're going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.
Bye.
Help support the channel. Go to thereef.support and get early access to podcasts, videos, and other content. That's thereef.support.